Welcome into OutKick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis, and I hope all of you are having fantastic Tuesdays, wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. We got a lot to dive into, but right off the top, what's our offer this week? Bet $5, you get back $150 on the Chiefs-Ravens Thursday night football game. Pick the winner. Chiefs, who I think will win, or the Ravens. $5 to win, $150 for new users. That is a 30-1 payout. Get your bets in at fanduel.com/Clay. That is fanduel.com/Clay. One more time. And by the way, Arizona sports gambling now live in your state. Fanduel.com/Clay. Put up a poll question that has got some people triggered. The Corona Bros are mad. How dare I analyze COVID as an actual danger, as a reality? I asked this question. In the wake of 7 different coaches on the New Orleans Saints testing positive for COVID, I asked, would you rather a player on your favorite team get COVID or injure his knee so that he has to be helped off the field by trainers and can't finish a game? The MRI will determine the severity of the knee injury the next day. Nearly 10,000 of you have voted in the first 30 minutes, and 92% of you had said they would rather a player get COVID. 8% of you said injured knee. 92% of you said they'd rather have the player get COVID than have an injured knee, which goes to the essence of what I have argued for a while that very few people will actually discuss, and that is this reality. Football, the game of football itself, is way more dangerous to athletes and coaches, but certainly athletes that are on the field than COVID is. Yet we are still treating COVID like it is a death sentence, even though if you are young, you're under more danger of murder, under more danger of suicide, doing personal harm to yourself, under more danger of dying in a car accident, under more danger of the seasonal flu than you are from COVID. Now, COVID is stratified based on age range and based on obesity. If you are old and fat, you need to get as many COVID vaccines as you can. You might as well get 50 of them if you are old and fat, because the data reflects that COVID is going to be an issue if you get it and you are old and fat. But if you are young and you are healthy, COVID is far less dangerous to you than driving to and from work. It's under much less danger to you than going about your daily normal routine. I think all of this matters because people have lost their mind when it comes to COVID, and I'm one of the few people that will actually share facts with you. And we had a good discussion. I encourage you to go listen to it on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show with Dr. Marty Makary, who has do I still have my newspaper here? I think I do. Hold on one sec. He has a Wall Street Journal op-ed up today, and he's talking about COVID confusion at the CDC. This is today's op-ed page in the Wall Street Journal. And in particular, Dr. Makary says, based on Israel data that was published on August 25th, they did a test of 700,000 people, and they found that natural immunity was 27 times more effective than vaccinated immunity in preventing symptomatic infections. Let me repeat that. In Israel, where they actually have good data, as opposed to the United States here, where they have limited data, 700,000 people, that's a lot, were studied in Israel, and they found that natural immunity, that is having had COVID and recovered from it, is 27 times more effective than vaccinated immunity in preventing symptomatic infections. Somebody asked me, they said, hey, Clay, if you had to make a choice, would you rather break your leg or get COVID again? I would way rather get COVID again. I had absolutely no issues whatsoever. One day in November, I had a 99-degree fever. That was it. One day. I felt a little bit icky. And after that, 100% fine. It was nowhere near as bad for me as the flu. If COVID hadn't have existed, I would have thought I just had a 24-hour bug. I would way rather get COVID again than have a broken leg or tear my ACL or have some sort of dangerous physical injury. And so these are real details, real facts that almost no one is talking about. Natural immunity. And I want to give some cover here and credit to Lamar Jackson. I'm going to talk about Monday Night Football in a moment, but Lamar Jackson is getting ripped and criticized by the Corona Bros out there because he won't get vaccinated. He's had COVID. And Lamar Jackson is in the exact same spot as me. So is Cam Newton. We need to be talking about natural immunity here and pointing out that it makes no sense to require someone to get the COVID vaccine if they've already had natural immunity. And let me take it outside of COVID because people lose their mind and they're like, oh my God, COVID, it's crazy. They're so emotional. We talked with Dr. Macri on the radio program today, and he pointed out something that I think is really significant. I'm 42 years old. I don't know how many of you are around my age, but if you're around my age, you had to grow up and get chickenpox. There was no chickenpox vaccine. In fact, my parents sent me over to the neighbor's house to get chickenpox back in the day in Nashville, Tennessee, when I grew up in the 1980s. Parents wanted you to get chickenpox because if you got it at an older age, it was more likely to be dangerous to you. You got chickenpox at a young age, there was likely not to be significant complications from it. So my mom mom's a microbiologist. She's pretty decent training. Used to get free strep throat cultures back in the day. She worked at the state of Tennessee lab. She would give us, it's kind of an interesting move there, but she would give us our own the cultures, and then she would put it on the Petri dishes, and we'd get free strep throat vaccines if she thought we had strep throat. That's what she did. She looked at all the strep throats under a microscope and decided whether or not somebody had strep throat. Okay? So, we got chickenpox. So I had chickenpox when I was a kid. My sister had chickenpox when she was a kid. Most kids out there got chickenpox. Interesting aside. Do you see the scar on my face right here? When I was 6 years old, I was out of first grade with chickenpox. I was over at my friend Neil Rager's house in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, where I grew up. He had a dog named Casper, a big German Shepherd. I walked out in the backyard. I pet Casper on his head, and the dog jumped up, and it bit me across the face. When I had chickenpox, I had to go to the hospital and have surgery, had stitches all over my face, could see the bone here on my cheek. My lip was ripped all the way up to the nose, had a hole in my cheek here. The dog got me across the whole face while I had chickenpox. That was a tough time. So I had chickenpox. You know what? I've never gotten the chickenpox vaccine. And you know what's interesting? The CDC, according to Dr. Macri, on their own website, tells people if you have already had chickenpox, you don't need to go get the chickenpox vaccine because you have natural immunity. Yet they tell nothing, the exact same situation when it comes to COVID, yet they're not telling people who have natural immunity, despite this study that shows 27 times more effective than vaccinated immunity. Despite this study that's out there from Israel, they aren't telling people, hey, if you've already had COVID, you're fine. Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, other people like us who have already had COVID, we've recovered, we have COVID antibodies. It makes no sense for us to get the COVID vaccine. And by the way, Dr. Macri pointed out something significant, which was a lot of people early on when we were giving out vaccines and we didn't have enough of them and we were having to ration them, a lot of people out there who already had COVID ended up getting vaccinated for it, even though they didn't need it, and we took away the opportunity of other people to get vaccinated. If you care about the variants and all the spread and everything else, all this obsession, you should want more people who have never had COVID to be exposed to it or to get access to the vaccine. You want herd immunity to set in so the variants don't spread as significantly. You don't want to be wasting vaccinations on people who've already had COVID. It's nonsensical. So I'd encourage you to go listen to Marty Macri, who was on the show with us. You can also go read his Wall Street Journal editorial. I have tweeted it out. I think a lot of you will enjoy it. All right. Lamar last night versus Derek Carr on Monday Night Football. Fantastic game. Ridiculous, absurd ending. The Raiders gave away their chance in overtime with an end zone interception after a false start at the 1-yard line, after we thought they'd all won it. And then they ended up sacking Lamar Jackson, and they got the ball back, and they threw a deep pass on third down and won a walk-off in overtime. By the way, the OutKick six-pack of NFL picks, 4-2. We're on a roll out of the gate in our NFL and college football picks. Finished 4-2 last week. Appreciate all of you who've been tailing the picks. Respect the picks. We'll have new college football gambling picks going up tomorrow morning. We're winning 2 out of 3 on college football and 2 out of 3 on the NFL to start off everything. So Lamar ends up losing late against Derek Carr. Big game now coming up on Thursday. FanDuel.com/Clay. $5 bet returns $150. Pick the winner, either the Ravens or the Chiefs. I like the Chiefs, who have absolutely owned the Ravens of late. That is your Thursday night football game. It is a great one going forward. How good were Peyton and Eli Manning on the alternative broadcast of Monday Night Football on ESPN2? I thought they were stellar. Russell Wilson, I've watched him play for years. I thought he was more interesting and entertaining in the time that he spent with Peyton and Eli than anybody. Charles Barkley was great. Travis Kelce, Ray Lewis. I think they had 4 guests. I watched it exclusively as opposed to the actual broadcast itself. And I thought Peyton and Eli were great. And I will watch a lot of these broadcasts going forward. To me, I know, I've watched so many football games over the years. I know what's going on in terms of being able to watch the games. A lot of times I watch them on mute, responding to emails, getting work done, and I can just look up and kind of keep tabs on what's going on in the game without having to watch every single snap. I know a lot of you have watched as much football as I have, also feel the same way. But I found Peyton and Eli and their guest to be a compelling conversation, like I was sitting in a sports bar where you could have a knowledgeable conversation that talked about the game, but also touched on other things in the same way that you would if you were watching the games with your buddies. So I think it was a big win for Peyton and Eli, and also for ESPN. In fact, I think this is far better than the actual broadcast, the voice of God version of the broadcast. And I think it would be smart. I think this is going to expand in popularity. A lot of people sampled it this week. We'll see how much going forward ends up being overall an attention driver. I think it's going to be pretty substantial. So a couple of different things we still got to get to. I'm going to talk to you about Clay Helton being fired at USC, AOC's ridiculous tax the rich dress. We're going to talk about the Preds and their stupid COVID requirements, and the NBA as it pertains to players. But I want to tell you about all of my friends at Manscaped right now as we roll into the fall. A lot of you back in school, some of you going back to the office. A lot of you right now need to be putting yourself in as good of a spot as you can. You need to have the 4th generation trimmer right here, the Lawnmower 4.0, which is guaranteed to keep you from injuring yourself. Anybody who's ever had a cut below the belt, you don't want that to happen. You need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself with the fantastic lawnmower. Also, you can get hooked up with Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, and you can get ball toner for when you need a boost mid-vet. And how about you're sweating out there? Get the Manscaped package right now in their performance package, boxer, shed travel bag, the performance package, the weed whacker, the lawnmower 4.0, worst for your nose and ear hair, also for your below the belt grooming needs. They will hook you up. How do you get all these great packages? You get 20% off and free shipping with the code DBAP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code DBAP20 at manscaped.com. Don't gamble shaving your balls with the wrong tools. Choose Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. The NBA, interesting move here. 85% of their players are vaccinated. They aren't going to require the vaccine for COVID in the NBA. The NBA Players Association, credit to them for standing up for the players, is not going to allow the league to mandate the vaccine for NBA players. There will be no mandate that is put in place. This will be an interesting story to follow because there are likely to be many arenas in left-wing dominated cities that are going to have requirements that you have the vaccine in order to be able to go to games. It will be intriguing to see how exactly this shakes out. Speaking of idiocy, by the way, that's the positive side. Congratulations. I appreciate the NBA PA standing up for their players. The Preds, the Nashville Predators in my town, all right? I live in the Nashville area. The only place you have to wear a mask right now that I'm aware of in the whole city of Nashville is the airport. And I know because I'm traveling every weekend. I think the mask requirement in the airport is beyond stupid, all right, but it exists. And I have to fly, so I'm going to wear the mask inside the airport. Even though my favorite thing about the stupidity of the mask requirement in Nashville is there's a lot of different bar restaurants that have like sort of bars, seating areas that face out into the terminal, right? So instead of facing backwards into the bar or restaurant, they have a line of bars there where you can sit, have a drink, eat along the bar, looking out at everybody walking past in the terminal. No one who is sitting right there looking out into the terminal is required to wear a mask. They can eat and drink, they can talk, they can spit, they can yell, they can sing, whatever they want to do. The people who are walking past them, who you can literally reach out and touch, are required to wear masks. What sense does any of this make? None. But the idiot franchise known as the Nashville Predators, I don't really go to very many Nashville Predator games anyway. They have a super woke ownership group that is all in on far left-wing absurdity, and they now are mandating COVID vaccines in order to be able to go to Nashville Predator games. Guess what? Peace out. Nashville Preds won't get any of my money. Maybe there's other people who want to go. I'm not going. I had natural immunity. If they put in a position where if you have natural immunity, you can go, I'll take my antibody test and flash it to some idiot checking tickets. But this is absurd. Every bar in downtown Nashville, including the one that I own on Broadway, no COVID restrictions. Every single place that is out there in the city of Nashville, no COVID restrictions, no mask mandate. Bars are open, people are dancing, bands are playing. If you've been on downtown Nashville streets, you know how wild it is. And then, ridiculously, the Nashville Predators are going to be the only place, I believe, in the entire state of Tennessee now, across the river. You can go to Tennessee Titans events without even having to have anything, not even a mask requirement, as it should be for their games. And the Nashville Predators are going to require vaccine and COVID requirements, even though we know that many people who have the vaccine can still spread the virus too. They still spread the virus at a high level even after they get the vaccine. It's madness. It makes no logical sense, but peace out. You probably would have gotten a few $1,000s of my business. You're not going to now. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to take my family. And as a result, maybe somebody else will step up and spend the several $1,000s that I would have spent on Nashville Predator tickets. In the meantime, you can find somebody else. I'm not going. And I think it's a bad business move. It also makes no sense from a health perspective. Clay Helton has been fired as the USC head coach after week 2. Now, I said the ultimate craziness for college football would be if they showed up at the Oxford airport and rehired Lane Kiffin at the Oxford airport several years after they fired him at the LA airport in the wake of an early season defeat. I think Clay Helton is getting fired for a couple of reasons. One, you've got Chip Kelly rolling at UCLA. Mario Cristobal is really rolling now at Oregon too, and USC lost a 17.5-point favorite to Stanford. So what's interesting about this is who is USC going to hire? I've got 5 names for you that I think will be on the list in some form or fashion. No particular order. Urban Meyer, Luke Fickell, Cincinnati's head coach. Urban I really think might pull a Bobby Petrino, which is so underrated. Remember when Bobby Petrino left a note in the locker room for the Atlanta Falcons, and then next thing you knew, he was calling the Hogs for Arkansas? It really wouldn't surprise me if something similar ended up happening with Urban Meyer, except with USC. Luke Fickell, who's got things rolling at Cincinnati. James Franklin at Penn State. They come after him again. It wouldn't stun me if they came after him going forward. I think Mario Cristobal at Oregon. Why would you not contact him and see whether or not he might be willing to come? And at Iowa State, has Matt Campbell realized that he's reached the apex at Iowa State as the Big 12 starts to collapse? Maybe there's a part of Matt Campbell wants to compete for a national championship and is realizing it's unlikely that he's ever going to be able to do it at Iowa State. Those are 5 names that I think could make sense going forward. By the way, NFL for a moment here. The Bills are now going to require the COVID vaccine. Not even a negative test allowed. The COVID vaccine is required in order to go watch the Bills play. And I know this is going to be wildly unpopular with Bills fans, certainly with the Bills Mafia, which is diving into tables that are lit on fire, which is doing all sorts of crazy things in the pregame tailgate scene. I can't imagine that this is going to be remotely popular with them. I think it's madness. Again, outdoor football stadium. You're not making anyone safer. This is absolute politically driven insanity. Finally, AOC showed up at the Met Gala, however you want to say it, a Metropolitan Museum of Art, a major fundraising event for that museum. $30,000 a ticket, $250,000 for a table at this charity event, and AOC showed up in a tax the rich dress. The irony of showing up in this fashion is Marie Antoinette-like. And here is my big issue. AOC, to me, has no understanding of how business works. And we've really known this ever since she opposed the Amazon second headquarters in New York City, because she didn't understand how tax rebates worked or how tax incentives worked. This is one of my big issues with the Democratic Party now, and why I find it almost impossible to vote for them. Virtually no Democrats understand at this point in time basic business. And if you don't understand basic business, then I can't trust you to manage the country's finances, because you don't understand how to manage a business in general. Now, I'm not a business expert. I'm no Warren Buffett. I'm certainly not a private equity star, but I did build a business from nothing to a $100 million valuation, just shy of it. That's pretty impressive. Most people out there have not taken a business that they founded from nothing to a $100 million valuation. And most people out there have not gone to the point of being able to ever unlock that kind of value in a capitalistic system. So I tend to think I have a little bit more knowledge about what it requires to create and build a business than someone like AOC does. But this is such a hypocritical move, because she's going to an event where tables at the dinner cost more in $250,000 increments than the average American family of 4 makes in 4 or 5 years, right? On top of that, $30,000 per ticket is way more than many people make in an entire year of work. And yet AOC is going to talk about taxing the rich when the data reflects that the rich already pay a massive share of the IRS federal income taxes. In fact, do you know the bottom 50% of income earners pay 3% of the federal tax rate? Let me repeat that. The bottom 50%, that's half of the people in America combined, pay 3% of the federal income tax rate. The top 1% pays 40%. All right? The top 1%, those are people who make over $540,000 a year, they pay 40% of federal income tax rates. In fact, the top 5% of income earners in this country pay 60% of all federal income taxes. Think about that for a minute. You don't hear a lot of discussion about this because people just scream, oh, tax the rich. 60% of all federal income taxes are paid by the top 5% of income earners. The bottom 50% pays just 3%. Do you think AOC knows that? I don't really think that she does, because data and analytics and business doesn't seem like a strong suit for her. But I do think it is massively significant to actually look at the data as opposed to just showing up and making yourself look ridiculous by arguing to tax the rich. This is a Marie Antoinette situation for AOC. She's hobnobbing with all these super rich celebrities and elite members of society who already pay a massive tax rate. And it just further cements the degree to which the Democratic Party has turned its back on the average person. Having for a long part of my life been an average person in this country, the Republican Party, in my opinion, speaks better for people like me now who have been poor and are now rich than the Democratic Party does. I appreciate all of you. DBAP, unless you need to. SBAP, we will be in Gainesville, Florida this weekend. I cannot wait to get there. Get your bets in on Thursday Night Football. $5 turns into $150 if you pick the winner of the Ravens and the Chiefs game. Go download the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. I appreciate all of you. This has been OutKick the Show.